Well, there's something I'd like to tell you, too.
Okay.
Well, what it is if I had to pick up anybody in the whole world to be adopted by, I'd pick you.
Thanks a lot, Stanley. I appreciate that.
Hmm.
Do you want to say goodbye to everybody?
Oh, goodbye to everybody.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you for being with us today. Stanley.
This is 29 Acacia Road, and this is Eric, the schoolboy who leads an amazing double life. And when Eric eats a banana, an amazing transformation occurs. Eric is Bananaman, ever alert for the call to action.
This video is brought to you by Patreon. Patreon, the lighter way to enjoy chocolate. 1985! Ronald Reagan begins his second term as president and immediately goes visiting a Nazi cemetery. Pop musicians take it upon themselves to solve famine in Africa, with Live Aid performing in London and Philadelphia, and We Are the World becoming the most famous and profitable charity single of all time. The FDA approves blood tests for AIDS, scientists discover a hole in the ozone layer of the Antarctic, and Coca-Cola changes their formula to much backlash. Commodore launches the Amiga personal computer, Steve Jobs leaves Apple, and the Nintendo Entertainment System makes its initial limited release in the United States, beginning the gradual rehabilitation of video games in the American market. In movie theaters, Back to the Future, Rambo First Blood, and The Goonies. Crisis on Infinite Earths hit comic book stands, Studio Ghibli is founded in Japan, and we have the births of Carly Rae Jepsen, T-Pain, and Bruno Mars. Meanwhile, on television, the Discovery Channel enters the cable market. The first batch of cable pay-per-view channels premiere, and World Wrestling Federation uses them to broadcast the first WrestleMania. NBC becomes the first station to broadcast in stereo, and Elmo makes his debut on Sesame Street. In the world of cartoons, this is the year of Thundercats, Robotech, Droids and Ewoks, and the Care Bears. But that's all small potatoes for the ride Nickelodeon would go through this year. Warner-Amex never fully recovered from the hit they took in the video game crash of 1983, losing over $240 million in just 2 years. American Express, the Amex of Warner-Amex, had been suggesting that they would pull out of their investment as early as February of 1984, and the only solution, it seemed, would be to sell the company and their assets. There was some shopping around. Time Incorporated and Telecommunications Incorporated expressed interest in buying the whole of Warner-Amex, but there was also this little company over here called MTV Networks, which was the home of a number of Warner's cable channels, including the hugely successful MTV and the slowly improving children's station Nickelodeon. That's what Viacom had their eyes on. Viacom had gotten its start as CBS Films in 1952, the syndication division of CBS Television. In 1970, the division was renamed Viacom, an acronym of Video and Audio Communications, and was then made into a separate company in 1971 when the FCC ruled that television networks couldn't own syndication companies. On its own, Viacom entered the cable market as a package provider, and in 1976 established Showtime as a competitor to HBO. And in the 80s began to buy companies left and right to grow their assets. A radio station here, a small cable service there, just build and build and build. And by 1985, Viacom would be the 10th largest cable provider in the country. In 1983, Viacom acquired a controlling interest in the Movie Channel, Warner Communications' own film broadcast channel, which had originally been dubbed Star Channel and had aired as a premium package during the late night hours after Nickelodeon went off the air. So Viacom already had some of Warner-Amex's toys over at their house, and soon they would buy the whole toy box. On August 10, 1985, Warner Communications announced that they would buy American Express's 50% interest in Warner-Amex to the tune of $450 million, and in turn offered to sell the rest of the Movie Channel and MTV Networks to Viacom at the price of $500 million. This was a pretty good deal, especially after MTV Networks introduced a new channel in January of 1985, VH1, another music video channel aimed at an older demographic than MTV was. Less Prince, more Michael Bolton. Viacom's purchase was finalized in September, and MTV, VH1, the movie channel, and Nickelodeon officially became Viacom properties, and have remained so to this day. Now, it's worth pointing out that Viacom wasn't super successful at this time. Oh, they were doing better than warner-amex, obviously, but the company was vulnerable to hostile takeovers. Viacom buying all of these companies was a tactic to keep potential buyers off their case. Keep Viacom in a little debt, and a bunch of broadcasting licenses that would have to be approved by the FCC if someone was to buy them. These kind of things make takeover attempts seem like too much of a hassle. They certainly didn't buy MTV Networks because Nickelodeon was a safe bet, but the first network for kids was showing signs of improvement as it finished its transition between the green vegetable, good for kids, edutainment era of Nick to the just for kids, secret clubhouse comedy and cartoons era of Nick. Out of Control, the final Cy Schneider project, had premiered in October of 1984, and in 1985, Geraldine Laybourne was promoted from temporary head of the channel to permanent head. The silver ball logo gave way completely to the orange splat, and the introduction of animated programming had given the channel a bump in numbers. Schneider-era shows were being gradually pruned from the lineup, with 4 shows getting cut in 1985. Against the Odds, Reggie Jackson's World of Sports, The Third Eye, and Vic's Vacant Lot all saw their final broadcast this year. Many of them considered poster childs of Schneider's edutainment mandate, especially Against the Odds, which Laybourne had often used as the example of everything the channel was doing wrong before then. 7 shows were added in 1985, 2 originals and 5 imports, 3 of the imports being animated shows. But that wasn't all. There was also some major shifts going on in the after hours. Since 1981, when Nickelodeon went off the air every night, the channel had been taken over by the Alpha Repertory Television Service, or ARTS, an arts and culture channel that aired things like operas and documentaries on painters and things like that. In 1984, ARTS merged with the Entertainment Channel to become the Arts and Entertainment Network, or A&E for short. And on January of 1985, A&E broke off and became its own 24-hour cable channel. This left Nickelodeon with dead space in the late night and early morning hours, and until Laybourne could figure out what to put there, all Nickelodeon could do was run text promotions for their daytime programming. Thrilling stuff. This went on for over half a year. Then, in July, Nick at Night made its premiere. This would prove to be the most important thing to happen to Nickelodeon in 1985, but we'll talk about that in our Nick at Night episode. In any case, things improved greatly for Nickelodeon in 1985, and they'd only get better from here. And again, can't stress enough how big bringing animated programming to the channel was for Nickelodeon, especially with Danger Mouse, which ended up being the second most watched show at that time, falling just behind You Can't Do That on Television in ratings. But there was a problem with Danger Mouse. Over its many seasons, the show aired in a number of different lengths and formats. Seasons 2 through 5 had serialized 5-parters, with each part being only 5 minutes long. To work in the stricter half-hour blocks of American television, the 5 parts would have to be edited together. But after you edited out the redundant opening themes, the redundant end credits, recaps of previous episodes, and cliffhanger monologues, you were left with an episode of Danger Mouse around 19 minutes in length, which is too short for a half-hour spot, and too long to double the episodes up. You can fill some of that time with commercial breaks, but that's still about 5 minutes or so of empty space. Now, since the beginning, Nickelodeon had been licensing and airing short films, both live-action and animated. Some of it to air as part of shows like Pinwheel, By the Way, and Hocus Pocus, but a lot of them just ended up airing in the breaks between shows, a practice that would continue into the early 90s. so Nickelodeon had a healthy catalog of shorts to fill that space, and presumably they did. But you know what's better than random shorts? Consistent shorts that fit in with the action hero genre of Danger Mouse. Perhaps an animated adventure comedy show with many 5-minute long episodes and a similar sense of British humor. That's the kind of show Nickelodeon needed. In other words, Nickelodeon needed Bananaman.
We have just heard that unless Bananaman appears in person to negotiate with Dr. Gloom, the world will end at midnight and the late-night movie will be cancelled.
Gosh, there's no time to lose.
But where is this Dr. Gloom?
42A Railway Company. But hurry, Bananaman.
Bananaman is the superhero alter ego of Eric, seemingly an average grade school boy, but whenever he eats a banana, he is transformed into a muscular adult hero. With the powers of flight, super strength, invulnerability, and laser fingers, Bananaman teams up with a talking crow named Crow and the chief of police, O'Reilly, to take on the evil machinations of the world's most dastardly supervillains.
Immediately through his audio banana phone, he heard the patter of tiny footsteps.
An escape tunnel. The chief was right. This has to be the work of the Mole. Well, Mr. Mole, dig this.
Supervillains such as the evil mastermind General Blight, the mad scientist Dr. Gloom, Bananaman's dark mirror Appleman, the Weatherman and his menacing snowman henchmen, the custard-based baddie Captain Cream, repeat offenders the Heavy Mob, alien invader King Zorg, and the senior citizen assassin Auntie, who has actually come the closest to defeating Bananaman for good.
Bananaman, speak to me. He was the best pal a bird ever had, you know. He had such fine qualities. He was brave, loyal, and...
Intelligent?
No. I mean, you don't seriously think you were intelligent. Bananaman!
Can Bananaman save the chairman of the United Nations Christmas Club Committee from being run over by a runaway locomotive? Can Bananaman save lovely newsacre Fiona from the literal clutches of the giant gorilla Ping Pong? Can Bananaman survive Dr. Gloom's babyfication ray? Well, he wouldn't be much of a superhero if he couldn't. Bananaman originally ran on the BBC between 1983 and 1986 for 3 series consisting of 40 episodes, all of them 5 minutes. And before that, Bananaman was a comic book hero, his adventures first appearing in the pages of the comedy anthology comic Nutty. The history of comic books in the UK is a video series unto itself. We tend to frame the history of American comic books in reference to superhero stories, as that's the most widespread and profitable genre of comics in this country. But while there were certainly superhero comics in the UK, it was not nearly as dominant. The real moneymakers were comedies, gag comics for the kiddies, and the king of comedy comics was D.C. Thomson, a Scottish publisher founded in 1905 who had found success in fiction periodicals. They looked to break into gag comics, first with The Dandy in 1937, and then with their big headliner series in 1938, The Beano. Oh no. Yikes. The past was a mistake. So, yeah, these comic books would be made up of 1 or 2 page stories, most of them starring some form of mischievous child or group of children. Minnie the Minx, Roger the Dodger, the Bash Street Kids, and the Beano's most successful character, Dennis the Menace. No, not that Dennis the Menace. And probably the most incredible coincidence in the history of the medium, 2 unrelated comic strips called Dennis the Menace premiered in 2 different countries within 5 days of each other in 1951. They don't have much else in common. The Beano Dennis the Menace is more actively a brat with his slingshot and bad attitude, in contrast to the far nicer, if over-energetic, American Dennis the Menace. It's just one of those stars aligning things that you can't help but comment on. Anyway, bratty children were the winning formula for DC Thompson. Maybe a few funny animal stories scattered in there, but mostly just destructive, roughhousing, and misbehaving children. But after nearly 30 years of bratty kids pulling pranks, DC Thompson decided to make another comic book anthology series, but one with more weirder and chaotic characters. On the 16th of February, 1980, the world saw the premiere of Nutty, and it starred such characters as Doodlebug, a cartoon mouse that could change the comic with a magic pencil, the Wild Rovers, a band of stray dogs antagonizing the local dog catcher, Big and Bud, two best friends of radically different heights, and of course, Bananaman. Bananaman is the brainchild of writers Steve Bright and Dave Donaldson, and artist John Gearing. Steve Bright, who was 19 when he started Bananaman, had been on the editing staff to the Beano before moving to the new comic. In contrast, Dave Donaldson was a comic veteran, having worked for DC Thompson since 1962. Bananaman was my first assignment as the junior part of the two-man team charged with creating Nutty comic back in the late 70s. I was given the task by my boss, who wanted a superhero for the comic, and having been a huge Marvel/DC Comics fan throughout my teenage years, I relished the challenge. I even sketched out how I saw the first scripted page looking, and was delighted when the original artist, the late great John K. Gearing, followed my layout and character sketches very closely, albeit drawn in his wonderful style, bringing the whole concept home beautifully. Of course, there were superhero comics in the UK, including a lot of American imports. Bananaman, as seen in the cartoon, was more of a generic superhero plus goofy, but the original comic version was more of a direct spoof of American superhero characters. There's an origin not given in the animated show where Eric came from the moon, crash landing on Earth a la Superman. His powers come from bananas because the moon is actually a giant banana, I guess. The police get a hold of Bananaman through a Batman-style banana signal in the sky, and the whole concept of a child transforming into an adult superhero comes to us right from DC's Captain Marvel, or Shazam as we all call him now. In fact, Captain Marvel was especially successful in the UK, and inspired a number of their own original superheroes, such as Electro-Man, Master-Man, and Captain Universe. The character design for Eric was a lot more, shall we say, Beano-y than it is in the cartoon. The giant head, lanky limbs, and ugly hairstyles that made up what I can only call the DC Thompson house style. It's best of both worlds, the rotten children of Beano meeting the heights of the superhero. And it worked. It quickly became apparent that Bananaman was the most popular segment in Nutty, and after a while the character came to dominate the covers. And 3 years later, it would become the first DC Thompson character to get their own cartoon. Not Dennis the Menace, not any character from the more successful Beano or Dandy books. So, why Bananaman? Why was the fruit-themed superhero the first to get his own TV show? It all comes down to merchandise licensing. In the game of merchandising in the English-speaking parts of the world, the United States is king. Tons of American merchandise was being imported to the UK, taking up shelf space that could have been being taken up by UK stuff. And yeah, the UK had a few characters they could slap on a toilet roll. Paddington Bear made a decent amount of merch. But look at what America had. Mickey Mouse, the Flintstones, Sesame Street, Star Wars, not to mention this new rise of toyetic cartoons like He-Man and Transformers. Slap them on a lunchbox or a tube of toothpaste and you're making money. The UK could do with some more of their own marketable characters, keep all the money on the island. One of the big licensing companies in Europe was Copyright Promotions, or CPL. CPL was finding success with some of their other clients, which included Mr. Men and our old friend Danger Mouse. DC Thompson approached them about merchandising one of their other characters, a large-chested cowboy named Desperate Dan, whose adventures were being published in the Dandy. DC Thompson was interested in getting a Desperate Dan cartoon made to help sell the merch, but CPL wasn't too keen. They didn't feel that Dan was the right character. So, instead, they suggested an alternative. Bananaman, being a colorful, kid-friendly superhero that promoted eating fruit, was a prime candidate for licensing, especially in the promotion of, well, bananas. Bananaman has since been picked up by banana importers, Fife's Guest and Jamaica producers, and used in a generic promotion. Sales of bananas have actually increased since the start of the campaign, the first since the Unzip a Banana campaign in the 1960s. The merchandising in children's television is a huge business, and I would say that 100% of the series done at the moment are produced on the back of merchandising sales. The books, the children's Wellington boots, hats, chocolate bars, yogurts, everything else. In a way, it is a shame because it would be nice to make films for TV just for the sake of making them. The merchandisers have got to make it work for them, so it is starting to become like commercials where a client turns up at scripting and voice recording. So, in a major case of citation needed, Wikipedia says that the Bananaman cartoon was produced by Flicks Films and DC Thompson's Other Classics for Abbey Home Entertainment in association with the Jim Henson Productions, which, as far as I can tell, is just completely wrong. None of these names are in the credits. I can find no record of a DC Thompson's Other Classics anywhere. British video distributor Abbey Home Entertainment wasn't founded until 1989. And Jim Henson Productions? Yeah, that didn't happen. Well, okay, the credit for Flicks Films is almost correct. Flicks Films is the sister company to the show's actual producer, 101 Productions, both run by producer and director Terry Ward. Situated across the street from each other, Flick Films did commercial work, while 101 Productions did actual television shows, though both companies shared staff. Their biggest project prior to Bananaman was the 1974 Mr. Men cartoon series. None of the actual comic book stories were adapted for television. Instead, new scripts were written by Bernie Kay, an American writer who had been living in England for 20 years, but also a great deal of improvising was done in the recording booth. For the show's core voice talent, 101 Productions brought in The Goodies, a comedy trio who had just ended a 12-year sketch comedy show of the same name. You had Graham Garden, voicing Bananaman and General Blight.
And that ends story time for today, kiddies. Did you like it?
Oh, yes, I like that bit about... Wait a minute. It's you, General Blight.
That's right, Banana Brain. You're an old arch-enemy, and you've fallen into my trap.
Bill Oddie voicing Crow, a character created for the cartoon, Chief O'Reilly, Dr. Gloom, and the Weatherman.
Yeah, boss, try this. It's a,
Wait for it.
it's a crowbar!
Do not panic. Keep your helmet on, General Blight. Just pull that red lever, and we shall disappear into a cloud of fog. Oops, there we go.
And Tim Brooke Taylor as the voice of the narrator, Eric, King Zorg, and Auntie.
One day, Eric's class visited the museum. Eric's project was ancient Egypt.
That's no executioner, it's General Blight in one of his clever disguises. Oh, if only I had a...
Hey, here, kid. Have a banana.
Good old Crow, I thought you were a raven.
No. They're raven. I'm just mad. Right, go on, kid. Eat your banana.
We do a whole morning of recording scripts, and at the end, they are lying on the floor with tears running from their eyes. Their ad-libs and little changes add a tremendous amount to the production. The animation in Bananaman is cheap-ish, but it doesn't feel nearly as cheap as the early seasons of Danger Mouse. A few segments are repeated, like Eric's transformation to Bananaman, and a couple of different versions of him flying, but there's a lot of original animation per episode. The art style, with its super thick lines and gangly proportions, seem to separate the character from the world they exist in. You can almost feel the millimeter gap between the animation cell and the background. 101 Productions was a very small company, Bananaman having a staff of 3 animators, 2 layout artists, and 1 in-betweener. Even with episode lengths of only 5 minutes, an episode of Bananaman took an entire month to produce from beginning to end. So that's how Bananaman came to be, from comic book to TV screen. But was Bananaman good TV? It was fine. It's just fine. In the inevitable comparison, there's nothing here that reaches the creative heights of, say, the Custard episode of Danger Mouse. Sometimes the plot gets a little sillier than usual, with all the characters participating in sporting events, just temporarily turning into a Hanna-Barbera cartoon. As a superhero romp, Bananaman is pretty unstoppable, lacking a kryptonite-type weakness to slow him down. His biggest flaw is that he's a little dim, but that's what Crow's there for, to immediately correct Bananaman. And even if the baddies come up with a clever plan to put our heroes on the ropes, he can just eat another banana and become supercharged. As a comedy, well, comedy is subjective, but I had plenty of, I get that joke, and not nearly enough actual chuckles. The show jettisons the more superhero spoof elements of the comic. The funniest thing to me was a running gag about Bananaman busting through the same wall in the police station over and over again, and the exasperated repairman trying to fix it back up.
I've almost finished painting this wall, Chief O'Reilly. I do wish Bananaman would learn to use the door instead of crashing through.
Had an accident, eh, Grindle?
My cabbages! Oh, and if you thought Danger Mouse had a monopoly on racist caricatures...
That call, banana fans, could come from any corner of the globe.
Greetings from the sunny south, mighty banana. Hear this message from the great Chipolata, chief of the tapioca.
Wow, Oh, the past was a mistake. All of this is to say, Bananaman isn't all that exceptional and special. It's an okay cartoon meant to sell bananas and yo-yos. Which is fine. It's fine. It's all fine. When Nickelodeon picked it up, they didn't need it to be a headliner. Nickelodeon bought it to fill a hole made by Danger Mouse. In the grand history of Nickelodeon, Bananaman is television's Spackle. Bananaman aired on Nickelodeon between 1985 and 1987, though not always with Danger Mouse. It was also paired with Curious George in the early AM hours starting in 1986. Just, wherever it fit. The reason I'm giving it its own episode of Knacks and not other reoccurring shorts like Picture Pages is because it was an actual part of the scheduled half-hour television block. It showed up in TV guides, while the between-show shorts didn't. The final new episodes of Bananaman were produced in 1986, with the BBC rerunning them well into the 90s. In 1985, DC Thompson shut down publication of Nutty. The sales just weren't there. But it'd be foolish to throw away Bananaman, so the character was moved to the Dandy, and then later to the Beano. And new Bananaman comics are being written to this day. He's still a frequent source of merchandise, though now a lot of it's for the nostalgic 80 kids crowd. A Bananaman movie has been in development hell since 2014, and in 2016, Bananaman was turned into a stage musical of all things.
Give me a B, give me an A, give me an N, give me an A, give me an N, give me an A, give me a man. What's my name? Bananaman.
There isn't a lot of it on YouTube, so I can't really judge the production, but Bananaman has never struck me as something that can hold a long-form narrative. His home is in 2-page comic stories and 5-minute cartoons. The entire series is available on PAL DVD, but easier yet, as of the time of this writing, the official Beano YouTube channel has the entire series available for free. Bananaman is slight. It's middling cartoon fluff, animated filler, selling toys and comic books, but there's certainly a place for that in the wider tapestry of media. Not everything needs to be a blockbuster production, and no television show can completely separate itself from consumerism. It just never makes itself exceptional, is all. Oh well. Nickelodeon had plenty of exceptional to make up for it.
Nick, Nickelodeon. Nick, Nickelodeon.
Next time, What? What is this? Has anyone heard of this show before? Why is this on Nickelodeon? Okay, well, guess I'm going to talk about it. Today's research shout-out goes to The British Superhero by Chris Murray. This 2017 book gives a pretty comprehensive history on the use of the superhero characters in the UK, giving a lot of context to Bananaman and just how it originally spoofed imported DC Comics. If you're interested in the history of comic books from around the world, definitely give this a read. Thank you all for watching. We're almost halfway through the 80s, and then after that, the 90s, because that's how the linear nature of time works. If you'd like to support Knacks, perhaps consider contributing to my Patreon. Every dollar goes to production values, paying bills, and maybe an extra topping on my pizza. Maybe. You can also support the channel by liking the video, subscribing to the channel, hitting that bell icon for notifications, following me on Twitter, sending a one-time donation through Ko-fi, and sharing knickknacks with all your friends. Up, up, and away.